Hello, good afternoon everyone, and welcome to this afternoon's webinar. We're looking at the VAT return today, and in particular steps 1 and 2 on your VAT return. So that's the preparation step and the reconcile step of the VAT return. Now this is closely followed by another session, which is session 2, and that covers the next stage of that. Now we have broken that down because we want to try and make these bite-sized and easy to digest. So that additional session, which is session 2, is going to be tomorrow afternoon at 2 p.m. So if you want to get yourself registered for that one, please do check out the follow-up email today. So my name's Jackie. I'm going to be taking you through today's webinar, and I'm joined by Abby and Michael, who are on hand for questions. So please, and sorry, Matt as well has also joined us. So please do make sure you get your questions across to us throughout the session. Don't feel you need to wait till the very end. We'll be able to answer those throughout. And where possible, at the end, we'll do some demonstrations if that's relevant. So you will notice that your microphone has been muted. That just means you can't speak to me today. But if you've got your questions, you can use the questions panel, which is the icon that looks like a speech bubble with the question mark in the middle. There is also a copy of the slides for today. So if you want to take a copy of those, then please use the icon that looks like a document with the folded corner, and that will give you a copy of all of the slides. Okay, so what we're going to be covering today, first of all, a quick introduction to the VAT module, and then we're going to go into the actual VAT return itself and do those demonstrations of those two windows, which is prepare and reconcile. And like I mentioned at the end, I'm going to point you in the direction of further support and also answer any questions that you may have. Now, just before we begin, just like to run this poll on this session, just to see what return you're generating. So we do have people joining us from both the UK and the Republic of Ireland. Just like to see what the sort of how sort of dispersed that is and who is joining us today on this particular session. So I'm just going to launch the poll now. You should see that popping onto your screen in just a moment to see if you're doing a UK return, or you're doing a Republic of Ireland return, or are you in a position where you're actually having to do both? So that poll should be appearing on your screen any second now. If you can just pop a vote across, that's great. That just gives me an idea of how we're going to run today's session there. Okay. Had a surge there all of a sudden, so we've got 80% already. So we'll just close the poll down. And I am just going to share that as well, just so that you can understand why we are going to do this today on a UK data set. So there is even 6% of you who are doing both. So we're going to do it on a UK data set. However, if you are joining us from the Republic of Ireland, that does not mean today is irrelevant. Okay, we are going to highlight along the way where those differences are and where it is different in the Republic of Ireland. So please do stick with us. It is still relevant for you because the principles behind the VAT return are pretty much the same. Okay, thank you so much for taking part in that. And I'll just pop back to the slide set, which is great. Okay. So before I jump into the VAT return, I'm just going to bring up my data set. Just disappeared there. I'm just going to talk about the VAT window first of all. So your VAT window is VAT down the left-hand side, and this is the place where it holds all of your previous returns, whether that be the VAT return, whether that be your V's return if you're in Ireland, your RTD return if you're in Ireland, or in the UK if in the past you've had to do EC sales. Now bear with me one more, I'm just going to see if I can switch screens for 1 second just to make this a little bit bigger for you. So just bear with me. There we go, the demonstration should be a little bit bigger now, so I'm just going to pop it onto that screen. Makes it a little bit easier to view there. So this is almost like your audit trail of all of your previous returns. Now, as you can see, I'm in the UK and I've only done VAT returns, so I don't have any of those other returns in here. But if you are doing those returns or you have done them, they would all sit in this window here. This allows you as well to see a history of your VAT returns, so you can see everything that you've done in the past, and you can also open up previous returns as well. So it allows you to look at those figures. And not only can I look at them at this level, but I can use things like the drill down feature to look at those figures. I can also print reports, do a check on the verification results. I can have a look at any adjustments that were posted as well. So a lot of information can be just taken from this window here. So in the UK, we've got the UK options, but like I say, in Ireland, you would have the VAT return, but you'll also have the options for a VAS return and the RTD, the return and trading details. So our software is designed to do a VAT return based on your period that you're submitting for. You may be submitting on a monthly basis, in which case you can enter a monthly period. You may be on an annual basis. Again, the program can accommodate that for you. But the most common one is a quarterly submission. So that's what we're going to do today. And you can see what my sort of previous submissions have been. So you can see most of them have been quarterly. Had to do a little catch up on there just to catch up my data set, but most of them are quarterly. The important thing is that what is in your Sage matches the obligation period with HMRC if you're in the UK or ROS in Ireland. Now, the reason I mention that is under Making Tax Digital rules, it is absolutely essential that you submit your VAT return in Sage that matches the date range on the HMRC gateway. Now, prior to Making Tax Digital, what we did find is lots of customers who were actually quarterly submissions were actually doing 3 returns. They were doing monthly returns and then combining the figures manually. Now, you can't do that any longer under Making Tax Digital. The date that you have here must match what you're submitting for, because if you don't, it will throw up errors for you. Okay, so I'm going to go into my next VAT return. So as you can see from my data set, the next VAT return due on this data set is my January to March return. So we're slightly overdue on this one. And I just want to, along the way, also try and pick up some of the pitfalls and where things go wrong for our customers as well, so that we can try and help you avoid calls into technical support. So first of all, we've got the VAT return window here. So I'm going to select the option there. And when I click on that option, you can see that that's pulled up my previous VAT return. And this, believe it or not, is a really common call, is how can I actually get into a blank VAT return? So to do that, you need to make sure you don't have anything highlighted. So I'm just going to use the clear option to clear all of my selections. Now that it's cleared, I'll try again. And as you can see there now, it's now giving me that blank VAT return. So it's a really big call generator, especially for people who are new to the VAT return. Okay, so we're going to go through these next 2 windows. And the first port of call is the backup. Okay, now this is probably the most important step, is to take a backup before we continue. Now, the reason we need to take a backup is because we don't have an undo option. Okay, so if I was accidentally to click reconcile on the next part of the VAT return, that would set this all in stone. And if I subsequently realized I'd done something wrong or it was done in error, I wouldn't have an option to undo that. Okay, so we do need to make sure that we're running that backup, even if it is just for us to view the VAT return. It's very easy to click it by accident. So I'm going to run the backup, and it's always advisable to check your data beforehand, particularly when you're doing something like a VAT return. You want to make sure that your data is correct and there's no errors in the data. So I'm just going to run that through, and that means we're covered should I accidentally click on reconcile. Okay, so that's just running through there for me now. Now, errors don't mean that there's something wrong with the data in terms of I've processed something incorrectly. It means there's damage to the files. Okay, so that's why we must check our data on a regular basis. And when we're checking that data, if there are any errors, we're acting immediately on those. Okay, taking a little bit of a while to go through, but you can see there, no errors today, so we're in a good place for doing our VAT return. and that's nicely updated to indicate that I've done that recently. So next is the date range. Okay, now this might be quite self-explanatory, but there are a couple of options in here that do generate a lot of questions. So first of all, it does default to monthly returns. So you can see, not custom date range, monthly date ranges there. So you can see it's automatically picked up January to March. That's my next 3-month period. And we do have the option for custom date range. So rather than using whole months, which is what I was trying to say earlier, we have an option to do a from and to date. Okay, now that's a great option. You might be wanting to run a VAT liability for a certain number of weeks that isn't a whole month, say for example 6 weeks, then that's a great feature to use. But I would say most people tend to stick to using whole months. Okay, now just to give an example of a time we have used this in real life, and it wasn't even the most recent leap year, it was the one prior to that, and that was when the VAT return wasn't recognising the 29th of February. So what we had to do is, if the VAT period ended at the end of February, was use this option here for a custom date range. So it's not that commonly used, if I'm honest. So my advice would be stick to whole months, and then you're making sure you're not missing any dates off. We then have this option under here to include reconciled transactions. Now again, this is a huge question generator. Should I tick the box? Should I not? What does it mean? So in terms of my data set, this is the first time, and hopefully the only time, I'm reconciling January to March. Okay, when I do January to March, I'm hoping it's all boxed off and complete, and I don't need to revisit that period. So if that's the case, and I haven't done it before, then if I click include reconciled transactions, there shouldn't be any, because it's the first time I've reconciled January to March. So if I tick the box, it shouldn't really make any difference. But normally my suggestion and our suggestion would be to leave that unticked. Now again, the reason that's there tends to be for when something's gone wrong, okay? And quite often that's that someone has reconciled their VAT return in error and they need to regenerate the VAT return for that period, but because the transactions are reconciled, they need to tell the software to still include them. Now that's not a perfect fix because it won't include any late entries or any corrections that were included the first time round. So it's really important that that's only used as an absolute last resort. So my advice would be for a day-to-day VAT return, leave that checkbox unticked. We've also got some settings. Now so far what we've gone through there is the same in UK and Ireland. We've got some VAT verification settings, and the majority of these are the same as well. Now, these settings are 8 checks. It will run across your data, checking for anomalies. And it's anomalies in your data set. So it's not going to say something like, oh, you've missed off that invoice, but it's certainly going to look at something and say, that looks a little bit odd compared to previous versions or previous entries. Have a look at this first. Okay, it'll say, have a look at this. We're not sure on this. Just be safe before you actually run the submission to HMRC. So it does 8 checks, and like I say, most of them are the same. The only one that's different there is the VAT values, because obviously in Ireland you've got a slightly different rate, so yours are slightly different in here. And tax code, probably still T1 in Ireland by default, but your rate will be 23% as opposed to 20%. Now these checks can be left on, so my advice again would be, if you're new to VAT, leave these switched on so it can show you a few things. But if you start to find they're a bit more irrelevant to you, that may be adding time to your VAT return, then you might want to switch them off by unchecking them, for example, like that. So it's going to do these checks. It's looking for things like duplicates. It's looking for invoices that haven't been updated. Also, transactions not using your most common tax code, which is a really common one to come up with transactions. So we'll have a look at that in just a moment when we run through the VAT return. Now, these aren't things that absolutely need to have actions. It may just be that it's highlighting something that's correct. And in that case, you can be quite happy that what you've processed is correct and you can go on your way and get that submitted. So it's just looking for things that look odd for your normal behaviour. So I'm going to leave all of those on. We'll come back to those in just a moment. I just quickly want to talk about the boxes. So in the UK, we've got 9 boxes, and these are all designed to pick up certain tax codes and certain transaction types. The same in Ireland, we've got 11 boxes. They are labelled slightly differently, so they've got different numbers, but they've also got different descriptions as well, and they are all designed with legislation in mind from HMRC or the revenue. So automatically it will do the calculation for you based on the transaction type and the tax code you've entered. So at this point, I'm really happy. I've got everything I need in here. I'm going to calculate the return, and calculating will just generate those figures for me. It's not setting anything in stone, and it's just populating those boxes for me on the VAT return to have a look at. So we've always got a point of return at this point. Now, what it does when we click calculate is it looks between January and March for all of our transactions that are VAT applicable and starts to pull those together. But what it also does is it looks back prior to that date, so in this case January, for anything that's unreconciled that it thinks it should be. And in this case, it's found a transaction. Now this window here shows me those transactions, and there's only really 2 reasons why you should have a transaction in here. One is a late entry. So for example, I've just done my VAT return up to the end of December, completed it, submitted it, paid it, and then all of a sudden an invoice drops through. It's maybe been lost in the post or left on someone's desk with a December date. So what we need to do is enter that correctly with the correct date on, because we want it to age correctly, but we also want it on the next VAT return. And the way we do that is by pulling that through as a late entry. So it would pick up in this window here. And that's fine because it is something that needed to be submitted. The other one is what you can see on screen there, okay? And the clue here is in the details column. So this is actually a correction. So this was originally an invoice. The invoice was dated the 16th of December. And what happened was, because it was reconciled for VAT, when we corrected it by deleting or amending it, it asked us if we wanted to post a reversal. Struggling with the words today. So it asked us to post a reversal. We said yes, and what has happened here on the VAT return is it's pulled through that credit note. So it's posted the opposite transaction for us. So really, we've reported VAT on that original invoice to HMRC or ROS, and now we need to report the correction. So what we need to do at this point is include this on our next return. Now that's fine because we've got the option to include or ignore, but these options here are all or nothing. So if I had a long list of say 10 transactions sitting here and I click include, it will include all 10 of them. If I ignore, it ignores all 10 of them. What we really don't want to be doing is ignoring them, because it means next time we come to do the next return in June, it's still going to be sitting there as an unreconciled transaction. So really we need to get to the bottom of, should it be there because it's a correction or a late entry? If not, we need to work out what needs to happen with that transaction. So that might involve a bit of investigation. Anyways, as we said, this one is a correction. It needs to be reported, so I'm going to opt to include this one. Okay, so that takes us on to step 2. Now again, just a little reminder, if you've got any questions, please do get them across to the team. We've got Abby, Matt and Michael all on hand for questions, so please do get them across to the team while you've got all of us available. So we're just going to move on to step 2 now, okay? And I'm just going to jump ahead, okay? This is the point here where we're setting everything in stone. Click this button and that is going to lock everything in for us, okay? So we need to understand that before we click on here, we're 100% happy with our figures. So the first place to start is next to this yellow triangle. So it's indicating something's maybe not quite right. And that's the verification results. So those 8 checks it's done on my data have flagged a few transactions as looking a little bit odd. So I'm going to just go into view results. And in view results, you can see I don't have any potential duplicates. So it's quite happy with those. But I do have some transactions or some invoices that haven't been updated to the ledgers. Now, when it's talking about invoices here, it's talking about invoices using the invoices and credits module. So it's not a batch invoice. It's an invoice that I've created to print off, but I haven't clicked update. Now, because I haven't updated, it means it hasn't posted that information onto the ledgers. So that invoice isn't showing on customers. It's not showing on the nominal codes. It's not showing on the VAT ledger. So we can view these and see what our actions need to be. So these 5 invoices were created in 2023 and they're not impacting our VAT return. Now, if they have to impact our VAT return, we need to come out of the VAT return, locate these 5 invoices, update them and recalculate the return. If they don't need to, so for example, if it's just that someone's been testing the module to see how it works, they're not actually live invoices, then you can ignore them for now, but ultimately you probably want to go and delete them so they're not sitting on your system there. So I'm going to ignore these and assume that that's been done. We've got one there, also a purchase order. So if you use the purchase order modules, when you mark it as delivered, you expect an invoice to follow very quickly after. And in this case, we've waited 4 years and we still don't have the invoice for that. So again, we need to work out, is that something that needs to be chased? Do I need to chase this supplier for an invoice? Or is it just something that maybe we've been testing out the module, having a little workaround on there? So I'm going to ignore that one as well there. The other one that normally comes up is transactions where the tax code is, sorry, not that one, sorry, it's this one's here, sales and purchase transactions not using your most commonly used tax code. So earlier on when I showed you those settings, one of them was to select your most commonly used tax code, and by default it picks up T1. The minute you use any other tax code, so for example a T2, a T0, it will flag that for you just to say you've not used T1, is this correct? So it's just getting you to check you're using the right tax code. So that's quite a common one to flag up because not many businesses just use T1 and T1 only. Quite often you'll have T0s and T2s in there too. So if I'm happy with these, I can ignore them, okay? There's no action there, the triangle's still there, but I can still ignore them there. Okay, so I'm just going to move on to making adjustments now. In fact, I'm going to just cover off this one first. So this is the drill down. Okay, so this is available on boxes that aren't a calculation. Okay, so the same in Ireland, you'll have the drill down feature. It won't be available on any boxes that are calculated as a result of other boxes. So as you can see here, box 3 is the sum of boxes 1 and 2, so the drill down is available on boxes 1 and 2. So I'm going to drill into that. And what that allows me to see then is the transaction types and also the tax codes that contribute to that. What I can do is I can delve further. So I can go into my sales invoices on T1. I can double click into them. And that takes me down to the transactional level. So I can see all of the transactions making that figure there. And if I want go a little bit further, I can send it to Excel. And from there, you can do things like filters and sorts. So that's available on most boxes there, and that allows you to check your figures and make sure that you're happy with the figures that have come through. Now, if you do need to make an adjustment, there is the option to make adjustments here. We normally recommend that this is only used on the advice from your accountant, HMRC or ROS, or because your VAT scheme requires you to do so. So this is not to be used normally for corrections. Okay, if it's a correction that requires an adjustment, that request will normally come from your accountant or HMRC. So if you've determined that you've missed an invoice off, leave the VAT return and go and enter the invoice with the correct details there. So this is to be used in those scenarios where you need to make an adjustment. Like I say, it might be a specialist VAT scheme. For example, partial exemption requires an adjustment to the VAT return. But I will, however, show you how to use it. It's quite straightforward. We've got our calculated column, the adjustment column, where I can pop the adjustment in, and what is reported. So I'm just going to go into adjustment using the little edit icon, and I'm just going to pop in a little explanation. I'm just going to tab across and pop in the value, and that can be a negative value too, okay, just by popping the negative sign in if I needed to. So I'm going to click on save, and as you can see, that's now meant that my reported value has changed. So it's changed as a result of that adjustment. So that's how easy it is. But what you can also do is if you've got some documentation, so you might have some an email, it may be something that indicates why you're doing that. It could be, if you're doing partial exemption, a copy of your calculation. You can add the attachment in as well. So that's just a quick, easy browse to the file on your PC. So that's the adjustments feature. Now, reports, we're not going to go into in too much depth. In June, we are doing our VAT badge again. Okay, so we've got a few sessions on in June, and one of those is running reports to reconcile your VAT return. Absolutely recommend to join that session. It's a bit more of a hands-on session, and it'll talk you through which reports to run and which reports you should be comparing against one another too. So we've got reports here. When you go into print VAT return, you get different options for summary, for a detailed one, and you've also got reconciliation reports. And this is designed to help you by allowing you to specify your VAT scheme, which we're on standard, so it's already got that in there, and it gives you lots of different reports to help you reconcile your VAT return. However, would recommend you either look at the recording of a previous session or get yourself registered for that session that we're running in June. Okay, so once we're 100% happy with those figures, you've run your reports, you're happy with those, you've gone through the drill downs, you're happy you've not missed anything, at that point, that's when you can click reconcile. And what that will do is it will just make sure that that's all set in stone for you. It's just saying that I've got an adjustment. Do I want to attach the document? So like I say, if I did have that email, I could do so. I'm going to say no, because you can always do this at a later point. It doesn't need to be done straight away. And do I want to flag those transactions as reconciled? So I'll need to say yes to that so that they're not picked up again on the next VAT return. And that there takes us to step 3, which we're covering tomorrow at 2 p.m. So I'm not going to go any further on that one there. I am, however, going to pop back to the slides. We've got a couple of questions come through as well, which I'm just going to jump onto. So bear with me, just going to change the screens over. So in the slides, we've got demonstrations of just those subtle differences between the UK and Ireland. You can see the difference in the numbering and the naming, and also the differences on those verification checks as well. Okay, so time for your questions. So there was a quick question before, and it was around that corrections side of things where I mentioned about the late entry. Okay, so if you amend an invoice, okay, that's been submitted, and it will post a credit note to reverse it for you. The question was, if you manually add the credit note in the sales, would this not be a double posting if you pick to include? So this is where you would need to decide, are you going to manually credit the invoice or are you going to delete the invoice? If you deleted the invoice, it would post the credit note automatically. If you manually add the credit, then the original invoice is still in place, so there's no reversal appearing. So it would if you deleted and posted a manual credit, but this is where maybe you need to make the decision as to whether you want to do a manual credit or let the program take care of it for you. But yes, please don't double post. We don't want you owing too much or receiving refunds that you shouldn't, and causing problems further down the line. So just be careful with that one. Okay, so while waiting for any other questions, just want to talk to you about the Help Centre. Okay, so our Help Centre is sage.co.uk/help, and this is designed to help you specifically with some of the key areas in the software, like your bank, your VAT, actually running your year end, installing the software. When you select one of these options, for example, manage VAT, what that will do is ask you where your location is because it's legislation specific. So I'm just going to actually do this while we're on. So go into Sage 50 accounts and manage VAT, and it will give you guidance relevant to your location. So if I went into UK and Ireland, you can see we've got lots of help and support available on there. There's videos, there's free training, and also the links if you need to get in touch with the team. So there's lots of help and support on our help centre. Also, we've got our sage.co.uk/webinars, which is our webpage for all of our webinars. Now, this is across both accounts and payroll, HR and HR advice. I'm just going to bring this one across as well. So this holds all of our webinars in one place. If you're looking for a recording, we've got all of our recordings for the past few years available on this link here. And we've also got our live sessions there. But I do just want to show you a brand new tile which has appeared this morning, and it's our upcoming webinar badges tile. So if you're interested in those badges that I mentioned, this one is going to host all of our badges in one place, but also let you see what we've got planned further down the line. But if you're looking for a live session, in particular, tomorrow's session, which is part 2, picks up very nicely from today, then you can click on the live sessions, and in here you can see part 2, VAT return at 2 p.m. We also have batch reporting tomorrow morning at 11 a.m. Now, this is probably one of my favourite features. It's a really good time saver, and Abby's going to run through that at 11 o'clock tomorrow morning. Just to draw your attention though, we do have our repeats of the management reports badge. So if you missed it and feeling like you're left out, we're rerunning it next week. Okay, so you do have one final chance to obtain your management reports badge next week. So if you can get to all of those sessions, or 5 of them at least, and the quiz, you'll be able to earn the badge. Or if you just found that you missed 1 or 2 sessions, not quite enough to make the badge, then you can join us on those sessions. But further ahead, do just want to make you aware we are doing a VAT badge, and that VAT badge is coming in June, and a link to that is on that webinars page. So get yourself on there, get yourself registered. You can earn your VAT Proficiency 2025 badge. It's been exceptionally quiet on the question front today, so I will hang on for just a few more moments, just in case any questions do come through there. I'm not used to it being this quiet on a VAT session, especially with so many people being on. So we'll hang on for just a few moments. We will pop on mute in the meantime, but if you are leaving us, thank you so much for joining us. Take care, and we'll see you on another session really soon. But we'll be back just before we end the session there for you. Okay, a quick question just come through there, and it says, I'm a Republic of Ireland user. Would you be able to show where the reverse VAT charge shows on the VAT return? So there is a really good article, and this is a Republic of Ireland one. So I'm just going to copy this one across to you, and I'm going to pop it in the question for you. This is a good article here that shows you all of the default tax codes that come with the software, but it also indicates what boxes it will hit on the VAT return. Now, there are different versions of reverse charge across the UK and Ireland, so I'm just going to be quite vague at the moment, but if you can send me a bit more information via email, I'll try and answer a bit more thoroughly. So I'm just going to bring this one across so you can see this and unpause the screen. So this article here that I've just given you a link to is the default tax codes for Ireland, and having a quick scan through, I apologise, I don't know them all off the top of my head because there's 50 odd. There is a reverse charge one in there for T20. So this is dependent on it being due to the construction industry and the relevant contracts tax. But there are other versions of reverse charge which are used for things like domestic reverse charge in the UK, but also for sale of microchips. So there are a few different versions. That's why I'm being intentionally vague. This article shows you when you use that, what boxes it will impact on the VAT return as well. Okay, so that's probably a good article to start on. Another place to have a look at is in the VAT return itself. So for example, if we were looking for this one here, but bring us back onto the VAT return, onto here, is in the VAT return. So you've just confirmed T20 looks correct, excellent. So for that one, which I'm just going to have a quick look there, obviously my company's UK as well, saying pick up in T1 and T2 on the VAT, on your VAT return. You can check that by going into the drill down on the relevant boxes in your return, and you can see which ones are picked up there. So you could have a look down the left hand side, and if T20 was there, you would know it would be picked up. It's also dependent on the transaction type. So for example, on that article there, it indicates that purchases, it has to be a purchase for it to be picked up correctly as well. So if you still have any questions, please just drop me an email, jackie.wilson@sage.com, and we'll have a deeper look into that for you. But that article should hopefully help you with that one. Okay, I'm going to look to end the session there. So thank you so much everyone for joining us today. Take care, and we will see you on another session soon, I'm sure. Bye for now, everyone.